My final reason for rejecting Islam is Muhammad himself. Now, many Muslims who can hear my voice believe that the last example of a genuine Islamic caliphate was the Ottoman Empire. So let me look at the Ottoman Empire and know them by their fruits. The Ottoman Empire invaded lands that were not their own. The Ottoman Empire persecuted Christians and Jews. The Ottoman Empire kidnapped and enslaved Christians by the millions. The Ottoman Empire indoctrinated children as child soldiers and sent them back to kill their own mothers and fathers and to rape their own sisters and cousins. The Ottoman Empire had a slave trade. The Ottoman Empire desecrated churches. The Ottoman Empire stole land and property and riches that were not their own. Do the Ottomans represent Islam? To an extent, yes.
Yeah. But at the same way, the Byzantines also represent Christianity. And everything that you said about Islam and everything you said about Jesus, I can find with the Prophet Muhammad, I can find in Islam also. So
okay, let's do a quick test of that claim.
What you've done right now was very carefully, selectively looked at history, and you pointed out what you didn't like. But then at the same time, you know, history is extremely complex and it's not one-dimensional. You, for example, claimed, you did say that Christianity, you said that the Christians fought against slavery for 2,000 years.
Yep.
You know what, I agree with you to an extent. But then also, if you look in history, you'll find that the Slavic people in East Europe were enslaved by the Romans who freshly converted to Christianity.
Yep.
So you find this in history throughout.
So now let me return to that point, because you said I was very selective. So let's be very specific. Did Muhammad own slaves?
Yes, he did.
Did Muhammad permit his followers to sell slaves?
Yes.
Did Jesus?
No.
So there's a difference.
Okay, and why?
So now, hold on 1 second.
Okay.
If I follow the example of Jesus, and you follow the example of Muhammad, which one of us can own another human being as a property?
Well, I wouldn't want to.
No, that wasn't my question.
Yeah.
I said according to our religion, which one of us can?
I can.
There you go. That's the difference.
Hold on. Close to it, and the clause is that if I live in a society where it's normative, you were speaking of something that was normative during the time of Jesus being alive.
Yes.
And that slave owning was
normative,
the rule of the day.
And he didn't. But did Muhammad?
Now.
But did Muhammad?
I already explained to you that he did.
Yes.
Right?
Thank you.
But.
So let's drill down into this. Let's drill down into this, because you've just said that according to Islam, you can own another human being as a piece of property. That's what you said.
Well,
and it's on camera. Right, 1 second.
No,
Are you proud of that?
Hold on.
No, I want to ask you.
No, hold on.
Are you proud? Are you proud of it?
Let me tell you something. I live in a world, okay, as a Muslim, I live in the West. I live in a place where owning a slave is illegal.
Okay. Because of whose influence? Islam or Christianity?
Well, it was not just Christianity.
No, that's not.
It's not just Christianity. It was an amalgamation of
happening in the Muslim world.
From a historical point of view, first of all,
is it still happening in the Muslim world?
I will answer, but let's have a discussion.
Let's time it. Shall we do 3 minutes? 3 minutes?
You can if you want.
Yeah, because.
But I would love to have a discussion versus a debate, because I think we would gain more benefit.
Yeah, let's have. You can join. You can all join in.
Even from your perspective, you will benefit a lot. Because
so let's time it.
Everything that you said, there's truth in it.
1 second. We're going to do 3 minutes, 3 minutes. He's going to have 3 minutes. I'm going to have 3 minutes. Once the 3 minutes are in, you just shout time, you stop. So you have the first 3 minutes, yeah?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, go on. Okay. Go.
All I'm saying is this. Look, you said a lot of things, and when I said selective, it doesn't mean it's wrong. Okay? Being selective does not mean that you're telling lies. All I'm saying is that everything that you said about said could also be said about Islam. You know, you talked about patience, that Jesus had patience and forbearance. I could say the same thing about the Prophet Muhammad when he went to Taif and was stoned by kids and children and chastised for 13 years in Mecca without retaliation, without plundering people, right? I could say the same thing. Now, you talked about slavery. Now, slavery is a thing that people like to throw the balls and trying to score points. But you will find that various of societies have been engaged in slavery. You said that Christianity somehow had an influence on it. Yes, the Quakers had influence on ending on slavery, but there was also economical benefits in ending slavery. We find this that today you can go to a database and you find that the ancestors for David Cameron, yeah, they got paid compensation because they freed slavery because of the industrial age that came around the Victorian times. That slavery was not as profitable anymore, and that's why you have the South and East, the South and North divide in America, because there are still people who are holding to traditional values, Christian values also. To say now, am I going to say now that this is inherently a Christian problem? No, it's not, because I look through the lenses of geopolitics, I look through the lenses of sociology, and I look at the lenses of history, and you'll find that it's a human condition to oppress. You will find this amongst Muslims, you find this amongst Buddhists, yeah? Hindus had slaves. There's caste systems in Hinduism. These are human conditions, you know. And I try to be honest. I look at things in history, Islamic history, and we will come to this because it's all about the Ottomans. There's deeply problematic issues amongst the Muslims in their history and things they've conducted and things they've done. I'm not going to lie to you about this, but to somehow pin it back to a religion, I could do the same thing with Christianity, and we pretty much in the same boat here.
Wait, so are you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
No, let me reset. Oh, because I'm talking with him. If he'll be patient.
Thank you.
Okay, so reset and then I'll do 3 minutes. When you're ready.
Let me.
No. Yeah, I'm talking with him. I'm talking with him.
Free and slave.
So hold on. Yeah.
People.
One
yes,
second.
Yes.
I'll wait until. 1 second. Are you ready? Yeah. So my point to you is this. I know that every group of people in every civilization, from a socio-economic and political viewpoint, have done all the same crimes. Yeah. We're all guilty of the same things. Okay?
Yeah.
My point to you is that those things that we would recognize as wrong, like the idea that my ancestors may have at some point owned your ancestors as slaves, we would both say is wrong, I assume. But I can validate that through my example of Jesus. You cannot validate that argument through your example of Muhammad, because as you have already admitted, Muhammad did have slaves. Muhammad did permit his followers to have slaves. And because you esteem, 1 second, I did not interrupt. So, but then what you are saying is Muhammad is the best of examples, which means that which Muhammad did is normative to you. And when we look at the Quran and the Hadiths, what we see in Sahih al-Bukhari is Muhammad sanctioning the use of slavery. We see in the Quran the sanctioned use of slavery. And because you believe that that is eternal for all times and all people and all places, you can't get away from that reality. Brother, can you tell me when I've got 1 minute left, please? Now, my point to you is, if we are saying that in our conscience and in our intellect, we recognize that me owning you as a slave, or you owning me as a slave, is a moral evil, then it follows that our preeminent example, our last example, should be the one that lays the groundwork for that to collapse. But what we see in Islam is quite the opposite. Christianity fought against slavery multiple times. We abolished slavery in England. The first time was in 1068 or 1069. That was centuries before Islam ever abolished slavery. In the Islamic world, the slave trade happens today. Now let me ask you this question in closing, because I'm coming to the end of the minute. Please answer this in your 3 minutes.
Sure.
Are you proud of Muhammad's example, and therefore are you proud that you have the right to own a slave? That's the question I would like you to address. Because as a Christian, using Christ as my example, I could never claim that. So, over to you.
Okay. First of all, when we talk about slavery, we must be very careful that slavery does not manifest itself everywhere the same. okay? Roman slavery and the rights of the slaves during the Roman times is going to be a totally different reality to the slavery during the Egyptian time. Now, the slavery or the transatlantic slave trade, it cannot be compared to the slave trade that took place amongst the Ottomans. And I'm not saying either of them are better or worse, but I'm just saying the manifestation of it is totally different. Now, when we say slavery, most people would think of Africans being taken, being kidnapped, and taken to the New World, right? And then that's the backdrop that we have, and then we think of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then we think that he did similar, or that's the slavery that was the manifestation of his time. Now, I can give you hadiths right here on how badly people who weren't Arab or people who weren't associated to particular tribes were treated because they were slaves. Okay? The way I understand Islam, my personal way I understand Islam is that Islam comes to a society and tries to filter out the ills. And equally, if you say to me that a hadith with the Prophet ﷺ, to your interpretation, encourages having slaves, you also have to then say there are also hadiths where the Prophet ﷺ discourages slaves and makes manumission or the freement of slaves a very core activity for people. How does he do that? By telling people that if you free a slave, this is your reward. Thank you. Such and such. Freeing a slave is an equivalent, like you won't never be able to repay your father unless you free a slave, for example, things like that. There's many things in the Quran as well, encouragement of freeing people from this bondage. So Islam comes into a time where, as you said, it's normative. It tries to filter out all the ills of it. However, you need to understand that 7th century Arabia is a place where tribes subjugate and wars and fight, and these things are just a reality that did not change during the lifetime of the Prophet, clearly. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I can answer your question, by the way.
You didn't. No, bro, no, because we're doing a time debate. So, when you're ready. So, the fact of the matter is, if Islam came to filter out the ill and to build up the good, it has failed. Because in 1400 years, Islam never stopped slavery until it was pressured to, the Islamic world was pressured to by the Western world.
Perfect.
It was the Western world that pushed the Islamic world into abolishing slavery. There was no internal movement within the Islamic world to abolish slavery. There never has been, and there never will be. Because if you say that you're going to abolish slavery, you're going to have to say that Muhammad did things that were wrong, and therefore he isn't the best example. Let me just give you some examples of Muhammad. Sahih al-Muslim, book 015, number 4122. Sorry, 4112. Imran B. Hussein reported that a person who had no other property emancipated 6 slaves of his at the time of his death. Allah's messenger, may peace be upon him, called for them and divided them into 3 sections, cast lots amongst them and set 2 free and kept 4 in slavery.
Hold on,
no, 1 second, don't interrupt. I did not interrupt you. No, don't interrupt. Don't interrupt.
I don't understand.
Bro, don't interrupt. I did not interrupt you. Muhammad had people that were set free and he put them back into slavery. That's your example. This is what Muhammad did. Sahih al-Bukhari, volume 3, book 41, hadith number 598, narrated by Jabir. A man manumitted, that means to release, manumitted a slave, and he had no other property than that. So the Prophet cancelled the manumission. He cancelled the release of the slave and had him brought back into slavery and sold the slave for him. Here's another example of Muhammad, narrated by Anas bin Malik in Sahih Bukhari, volume 8, book 18, number 753. The Prophet said, the freed slave belongs to the people who have freed him. So even when you're set free, you're still owned in the wider context by the slave owners. The reality is that Christians were fighting against slavery in the classical period. They would sell, I'll give you some examples, and in my next 3 minutes I'll give you examples. We abolished slavery in England in the 10th century. In the 10th century, that's when the Islamic slave trade was ramping up. You talked about Janissaries and the Ottoman Empire. Let me tell you what it looked like for my people, the Christian peoples of Eastern Europe. The Ottoman Turk would ride in and demand our children. Can you imagine someone coming up to you and saying, give me your child as a payment for a tax? Because they couldn't pay the jizya tax, the Ottoman Turk, the Ottoman Muslim, came into Christian villages and took their children as payment. And who else did that? Muhammad did that, and I'll show you that as well. Now let me ask you that. Do you agree with taking people and distributing them as the possessions amongst the believers? So you've got two questions. Are you proud of your right to own another human being as a piece of property? Are you proud of it? Two, do you agree with the idea of distributing people amongst the believers as possessions like your Prophet did?
Okay. How long is left?
3.5. Have I still got a bit of time? Okay, your turn.
Okay. So he asked me if I am proud to own slaves, right? That's what you said.
You're proud of your right to own slaves.
Right to own slaves. Okay, good. Okay, and then you also said that the second question was, can you say?
The second question was, do you agree with the idea of taking human beings and distributing them amongst the believers as property like your Prophet did?
Okay, so my understanding of Islam and its law and the way it's understood is not static. So I'm not someone who believes that because there was a time where people were doing that I have to necessarily do that, and that's somehow my attendance of me entering paradise. That's not what Islam for me is. I look at Islam and I understand Islam in a context of the zeitgeist I'm living in. I live right now in the UK. I'm originally from Africa. I live in the UK. And
let him talk, bro. Let him talk.
Now, of course, you're going to have things like that. Uninformed, ignorant statements like there's only one Islam. But when you look at the classical scholars and contemporary scholars, they come to different conclusions because there's additional information, there are changes in politics, changes in the way people perceive certain things, and that's how I see that. So your question is, you are now forcing me to go back to the 7th century and sort of apply that to my life, when the context of the 7th century I don't live in. So that's how I would answer that.
1 minute.
The other thing that you're saying as well is that your problem clearly is that the Prophet Muhammad was owning slaves, right? And again, I look at it in terms of a believer first and foremost, but I also look at it as in terms of a historian. That's what was happening at that time, right? He was saying about Islam failed because it never abolished slavery. Now, I've never claimed that Islam came to abolish slavery, but it came to regulate, possibly, and to get rid of the ills as much as possible, as much as society allows it to happen. And kudos to the Christians and the Quakers who got rid of slavery. But
okay, time.
Yeah.
Time, right.
Yeah.
So let us be clear.
Yeah.
You're ducking, and I don't blame you.
That's fine if you think that. That's
because I didn't interrupt you. Don't interrupt me.
Yeah.
You're ducking. Because you can't just stand here and say you're proud of Muhammad.
I can say that.
No, well, I didn't interrupt you.
Yeah.
You had the opportunity to say that you're proud of your right to own slaves, and you didn't. Because Muhammad
Why
gives...
do I have to do that?
Why are you interrupting?
Yeah, no.
Why are you interrupting? I didn't interrupt you. Can I start my 3 minutes again, please? Okay, so you had the opportunity to stand here and said, I am proud of the rights that Muhammad gives to me to own another human being as a piece of property, but you didn't. And the reason why you didn't, bro, is because your conscience is better than the conscience of your prophet. And I don't blame you, but that should be telling you something. If you can't look at Muhammad and say the liberties that he has given me I am proud of, and the restrictions that he has given me I am proud of, then he's not worth following. I can stand here and say that I am proud of Jesus Christ. And I am proud of the example that he gives me. Where he gives me liberty, I want to live in that liberty. Where he gives me restriction, I want to live in that restriction. And that is a better example to you. Because I am yet to find a person that can find a problem with Jesus. But I find plenty of problems with Muhammad.